you know not to go up to your chest in certain swamps. Forget the giant snakes. When you fall into that nightmare soup at 2 in the morning and you get that black water on you and there's things going up your pants, it's like you are in a festival of sex and death.
A newly discovered ancient Mayan city, a rock fortress 650 feet above the ground, and the lost city of the monkey god. These are ancient structures found in jungles that shouldn't exist. This is super exciting because it's a very recent find. In southeastern Mexico, a team of archaeologists has uncovered a hidden ancient Mayan city, more than 6,000 structures, including pyramids, all buried under thick vegetation. The city has been dubbed Valeriana, and it was revealed thanks to LiDAR, which stands for Light Detection and Ranging. It's a laser-based mapping tool that uses airborne sensors to scan the landscape. The data, collected back in 2013, as part of a forest monitoring project, wasn't actually being used for archaeology, but when researchers took a closer look, they saw this sprawling Mayan city. And according to Luke Auld Thomas, the study's lead author, our analysis revealed not only a picture of a densely settled region, but also a lot of variability. End quote. This wasn't just a small settlement, but a large city, potentially home to 30 to 50,000 people between 750 and 850 CE. The city was hidden in plain sight, with farmers unknowingly working among the ancient ruins. And it's amazing because 6,764 structures have been found, and as Auld Thomas put it, there is much more to be discovered. When I first saw an image of this place, I thought that it may have been an AI-generated image, but it isn't. Despite how fantastical this place looks, it's actually real. This is the Sigiriya rock fortress in Sri Lanka. High in the jungles of Sri Lanka, there's a towering rock fortress that doesn't look like it should exist. Sigiriya, also known as Lion's Rock, was built in the 5th century CE by King Kashyapa, who constructed this place on top of a giant boulder that rises 200 meters or about 650 feet above the ground. To enter the place, visitors had to climb this massive staircase that passed through the mouth of this colossal lion sculpture. After Kashyapa completed the palace, his brother launched an attack. Kashyapa's army abandoned him, and the king's wives jumped to their deaths from the top of the rock, and the fortress eventually was captured and fell into ruin. For centuries it was forgotten, first as a royal palace, then as a Buddhist monastery. When European archaeologists rediscovered it though, they were stunned. The lion entrance, real. The palace's mirror wall, designed to reflect the king's own image as he walked through, real. Today, UNESCO calls Sigiriya the 8th wonder of the world. What you're looking at here is known simply as the lost city of Colombia. In the Sierra Nevada de Santa Marta Mountains is a city that was lost to time for centuries. About 1,300 years ago, the Tairona people built an incredible city on top of the hills. And the story goes that they'd been instructed by their god, who told them to live as close as they could to the stars. For 700 to 800 years, people lived here until the Spanish conquistadors arrived, and the Tairona never encountered the Europeans themselves, but the diseases that they brought spread rapidly and wiped out the entire civilization. With no one left to care for it, the city fell into ruin and was mostly forgotten. It wasn't until the 70s that a group of bandits passing through the jungle came across this hidden city, and they couldn't believe their eyes. An ancient overgrown city full of precious artifacts. Pretty amazing. The bandits pocketed what they could and sold their loot on the black market, and that's when archaeologists caught wind of this amazing discovery, and soon what was known only as the Lost City was uncovered after nearly 500 years. For centuries, there's been a legend of this hidden city deep in the jungles of Honduras. Hernan Cortez, the infamous Spanish conquistador, heard rumors of what was called the White City, or the City of the Monkey God, a place said to be full of unimaginable wealth. Cortez searched and searched, but he never found it, and neither did anyone else for hundreds of years. But the legend never went away. Even Charles Lindbergh, the famous American aviator, claimed to have seen this city while flying over the country. Others swore that they'd found it, but for one reason or another, they couldn't or wouldn't reveal its location. Then in the early 2000s, archaeologists came across something almost by accident. A team following the path described by one of the more eccentric individuals who claimed to have discovered it ended up finding this massive ancient city exactly where he said it would be. Deep in the rainforest, they uncovered a pyramid and a series of stone sculptures, remnants of some advanced civilization that had vanished more than 1,000 years before. Now, it's still not 100% certain if this truly is the city of the monkey god Cortez spoke of, but it is still proof of a lost civilization. The lost city, now known as La Ciudad Blanca, is just a reminder that legends are sometimes closer to reality than we may realize. What you're looking at here is the ancient city of Tikal, deep in the Guatemalan rainforest. This ancient Mayan city, thought to have been called Yaxmutal, was once the capital of a powerful Maya kingdom, occupied from around 200 to 900 CE. There were huge pyramids, royal palaces, massive stone monuments, some still standing today, as you can see. Like a lot of Mayan cities, it's not super clear why it was abandoned. Could have been a combination of things, lack of resources, environmental changes. It wasn't until 1848, though, that an organized expedition rediscovered the place, but it's still one of the largest and best preserved archaeological sites in the Americas. These are the rice terraces of the Philippines. They're a pretty breathtaking feat of ancient engineering. These terraces, carved into the steep slopes of the Cordillera Mountains over 2,000 years ago, are often called the eighth wonder of the world, and for good reason. The terraces were designed to grow rice, but the real magic is in how they were built, using the natural contours of the land and without modern technology. Generations of indigenous Ifugao people with basic tools created all of this. It's said the Ifugao people didn't just build the terraces, they became the land. They engineered intricate irrigation systems, creating channels and bamboo pipes that bring water from nearby rivers all the way up to the fields so that the crops are healthy even in the dry season. What's even crazier is that these terraces are still in use today. People are still farming rice on the very same terraces that were built over 2,000 years ago. San Agustin Archaeological Park in Colombia is home to the largest collection of megalithic sculptures in Latin America and is considered the world's largest necropolis. There are all kinds of statues here, which were likely carved between 5 and 400 CE. You'll find gigantic anthropomorphic figures of jaguars, crocodiles, and birds. Some statues stand as high as 23 feet, or about 7 meters. Others are smaller, but still very impressive. We still don't know exactly who created them or why. What is clear is that a lot of the statues appear to guard burial mounds, which means maybe the ancient culture believed in protecting the deceased in the afterlife. The site was first documented by a Spanish monk in the 18th century, but it wasn't until much later that serious excavations happened. And today, San Agustin is an UNESCO World Heritage Site with over 500 statues scattered across more than 50 square kilometers. Great Zimbabwe, found in modern-day Zimbabwe, is one of Africa's most incredible ancient sites and the largest collection of ruins south of the Sahara. Legend has it that this is where the biblical queen of Sheba once ruled, but in reality the city existed between the 11th and 15th centuries. The exact identity of the people who built it was debated for years, with a lot of the colonial government in Rhodesia outright refusing to believe that the advanced city was built by native Africans, but today it's generally accepted that the Shona people built the city. At one point, Great Zimbabwe was home to around 18,000 people, and its massive stone walls, some reaching 5 meters or about 16.5 feet in height, were built without any mortar. Nan Madol in Micronesia is an ancient city built on over 100 tiny islets, earning its nickname Venice of the Pacific. There's a lot of mystery behind how it was built. Local legends say two wizard brothers, Olishipa and Oloshipa, arrived from across the sea in a giant canoe, and they wanted to create a place to honor the gods of the sea and harvest. After two failed attempts to move giant stones to the site, they used the magic of a dragon to levitate the blocks. Namdal's construction is still being studied today. The people who built it didn't have pulleys, cranes, no metal tools, so it's believed they moved nearly 2,000 tons of stone every year for over 400 years. How they managed this, especially in such a remote area, is still one of history's greatest mysteries. Angkor Wat in Cambodia is one of the most jaw-dropping ancient structures in the world. It's also the largest religious monument in the world. It was originally built in the early 12th century, designed as a Hindu temple dedicated to the god Vishnu. By the 14th century, it had become a Buddhist temple, which it remains to this day. The entire temple complex is surrounded by a massive moat. The main temple rises up with 5 towering spires representing the 5 peaks of Mount Meru, the center of the Hindu universe. The walls are etched with incredible images of mythical creatures and battle scenes, and the craftsmanship is so intricate that it really feels like a completely different world. And that's just from images and video I've seen. I can only imagine what it'd be like actually stepping into this place. And Angkor Wat is just part of what was once a much larger city, Angkor, which once housed over 1 million people. And that's massive when you consider it was built in a time long before cranes and other modern tools. Over the centuries, the jungle slowly is creeping back in, and it's overtaking a lot of the city, leaving behind this incredible hidden world that wasn't fully rediscovered until the 19th century. Definitely a place I gotta add to my list of places I want to go.
Number 10. The Journals. In 1520, Ferdinand Magellan took time out of his busy schedule of sailing around the world to stop in what is now Patagonia, where he found a naked giant dancing and singing on the shore. Magellan ordered one of his men to make contact and to make sure to reciprocate the dancing and singing to demonstrate friendship. It worked. The man was able to lead the giant to a small island offshore where the great captain waited. Describing the scene was a scholar along for the journey, Antonio Pigafetta, who kept a diary of the journey, and that was later turned into a book. When he was before us, he began to marvel and to be afraid, and he raised one finger upward, believing that we came from heaven. And he was so tall that the tallest of us only came up to his waist and had a big booming voice. On that small island, Magellan and his men gave the giant food and drink, then made the mistake of showing him a mirror, wherein the giant, seeing himself, was greatly terrified, wrote Pigafetta, leaping back so that he threw 4 of our men to the ground. But once things had calmed down, the explorers proceeded to make contact with the rest of the tribe, hunting with them and even building a house to store the provisions while on shore. Number 9. Giant in Mexico. In December 2022, TikTok user Squatch Watch Project, who claims to be connecting the cryptid community, posted a video of what they claim is a giant. The text on the video reads, "Real giant caught on video in Mexico." The video shows what appears to be some sort of mountain or cave. There is a hole in the side of it, and there's a very large man looking out. He seems to be staring at the person recording and then backs up and goes back into the rocks. Many people in the comments made jokes, but a lot of them think it's real. One user commented, "What's going to be the government's excuse for this one? The video and the zoom on this is on point." Others are commenting that it's like the film The Hills Have Eyes. Now, is it a giant, a feral human being? Who knows, but whatever it is, I will be staying far away. Number 8. Giant complex. In 2012, a team of explorers and researchers discovered what they believed to be an ancient pyramid complex in the remote area of the Ecuador Amazonian jungle, one not known to the general public, internationally, or even within the county. Bruce Fenton, author and researcher, believes the complex may be the lost city of the giants, so named for the large giant-sized tools that were found in the vicinity, as well as the local legends that speak of a race of giant humans who once inhabited the region. At the discovery site, there was one extremely large pyramidal type structure of approximately 80 meters square base and 80 meters height with steeply inclined walls. This structure is made up of hundreds of large stone blocks weighing approximately 2 tons in weight. The large hill has a flat area at the top where many artifacts have been found. It looks like a paved wall, an ancient street or plaza with a 60-degree angle, perhaps the roof of a larger structure. Many of the stones were perfectly aligned, have sharp edges, and seem to have been sculpted sculpted by human hands, said Mr. Giovanni, who undertook an expedition to the site in April and May of 2013. Number 7. The skull. A team of international researchers studying an ancient skull determined it belongs to a newly discovered species that's more closely related to modern humans than Neanderthals, but others in the scientific community say the skull might belong to a mysterious but already known ancestor. The researcher study, published in the journal Innovation, said the skull came from a previously undiscovered human species that lived in northern China. Researchers have named the species Homo longi, which translates to dragon man. The skull is the largest Homo skull ever found, and the researchers say it belonged to a male in his 50s who lived in northern China between 146,000 and 296,000 years ago. The skull shows a face that would have been much larger than modern humans, with thick brow ridges and deeply set eyes, but shows a brain that would have been about the same size. The skull was reportedly found by a farmer in the northern Chinese city of Harbin during the early 1930s while he worked on a labor crew that was building a bridge. In 2018, it was given to a Beijing area university. Now, if the skull does belong to a new species, it's largely unclear what their lives looked like. It's also unclear how much they might contribute to the lineage of modern human. The DNA evidence suggests that if the hominin sees another hominin, they're happy to interbreed, even if their brow ridge is a little bigger or their skull is a little higher, said Karen Babb, a Midwestern University anthropologist who was not associated with the research. Number 6. Mysterious silhouette. In December 2022, a TikToker named MixMasterXL posted a video of a giant on a mountaintop in Mexico. They captioned the video, 40-foot giant caught on camera walking the mountaintops in Mexico. Now, I don't think it's 40 feet tall, that's an exaggeration, but it's something giant up there. It's a tall black silhouette that's walking, you can see their legs as they take steps, and both of their arms. Now, if this was a normal sized human, you wouldn't be able to see them that clear or that much. It's clearly something large looking down below from the mountain. Now, the comments were mixed, with a lot of people thinking it was fake, but if it wasn't a giant, then what was it? Number 5. Ancient burial mounds. There is very credible documented evidence that giant skeletons were found across America in the late 1800s. In New England, skeletons unearthed in an ancient burial mound were measured between 7 feet and 10 feet tall. While respected newspapers reported these findings at the time, which points to the credibility of their source. In fact, there are several documented findings of giant skeletons from all over America in the past, with most reports coming from the turn of the 19th century. There is also evidence that bones of giants measuring over 2 meters in height were found in the tombs across Sardinia. This was covered in an episode of Forbidden History called The Mystery of the Giants. There are some reports suggesting that during the 19th century, the Smithsonian Museum in America was very keen to purchase the bones of giants found by civilians, only for them to never see the light again. There is a similar story in Sardinia, with farmers in more modern times uncovering massive bones and teeth and handing them over to the authorities, only to hear nothing more about them.
The Amazon rings. These are a series of strange ring-shaped ditches scattered throughout the rainforest, and no one really knows what they are or why they exist. The rings are ancient though, way older than the rainforest itself. Some archaeologists think the rings were used as burial grounds or maybe even as a form of defense, but there's no solid proof to back either story. It's all just guesswork. Alright, so you know what I'm gonna say next? Let's just get right to it. Some people think they were left by aliens. The idea is that the rings could have been caused by spaceships landing long before the rainforest grew over them. It's a pretty far out theory, obviously, but given that we still can't explain these rings, it's one that people keep tossing around. What makes the Amazon rings even more mysterious is that no one can figure out how ancient people would have managed to make them. The tools that would have been needed to carve out such precise shapes just doesn't seem to have existed back then. It's almost like these rings just appeared out of nowhere. So yeah, maybe they were made by some lost civilization or something else entirely. Alright, back to some big hairy ape guys, the Miracoxi. This is basically the South American version of Bigfoot creatures. These creatures are said to be massive, ape-like beings that can grow up to 12 feet tall. Imagine walking through the jungle and coming contact with something that huge. It'd be horrifying. And while they look pretty primitive, they're actually supposed to be pretty smart. They're said to use bows and arrows, and some reports claim they even live in villages. One of the most famous encounters with the creatures came from Colonel Percival H. Fawcett, a British explorer who was mapping out the jungles of South America back in 1914. Fawcett claimed that he came across these creatures north of a tribe called the Maksubi. He described them as big, super hairy, living in the wild and grunting instead of talking. He also said they were extremely hostile toward humans. In his book Lost Trails, Lost Cities, Fawcett tells the story of how he and his crew got really close to these creatures and things almost got violent. The creatures were about to attack, but Fawcett and his men managed to scare them off by shooting their firearms into the ground. But in 1925, Fawcett and his entire expedition vanished without a trace while trying to find the lost city of Z. Some think they were killed by local tribes, others think they might have just starved or got lost, eaten by animals, but there's also a theory that they were killed by the Marikoxi. Next up, we have the Boiling River. The Boiling River, also known as Shanay Timpishka, is a very hot river found in the Amazon rainforest in Peru. It's not the type of river you're going to want to take a dip in because the water can get really hot. Not sauna hot, I mean boiling hot. A hot cup of tea kind of hot. This river is about 4 miles long, and in some parts the water temperature can reach up to nearly 212 degrees Fahrenheit or 100 degrees Celsius. You can boil an egg in this river, and I'm not exaggerating. The YouTube channel Nas Daily actually posted a video trying that exact thing. So exactly what is going on here? Well, scientists think it has something to do with geothermal activity deep down in the earth. There might be some hot rocks or something heating up the water before it bubbles to the surface. That's my version of explaining that science. I'm sure there's much more to it than that. But local shamans also have legends about an entity known as Yakumama, a giant serpent spirit known as the mother of the waters that causes the water to boil. In 2012, deep in the jungles of Ecuador, explorers discovered the remains of what looked like a lost city. It became known as the Lost City of Giants. A group of explorers, along with a few locals who knew the area well, set out to find it, and according to them, the city had always been a legend passed down through generations. When they finally arrived, they found something truly bizarre. These massive, towering structures. The biggest of these was a pyramid that stood an insane 79 meters or 260 feet tall. It had a weird shape as well that set it apart from anything the explorers had ever seen. At the top of the pyramid was this flat, polished stone, which the locals believed was a sacrificial altar. The sheer size of the buildings led a lot of people to believe that this city could have only been built by giants. Archaeologists who visit the site have some mixed opinions, though. Some are convinced that the giants might have been involved. Others just don't really buy it. But it gets weirder, though. Along with these structures, the explorers found oversized tools and artifacts. The tools were so big that, according to the team, there's no way a regular human could have used them.
Now this is cool. In early 2024, a group of archaeologists were digging in the Panama jungle when they opened a tomb that hadn't been touched in over 1,000 years. And what was inside? A whole bunch of treasure. There were gold belts, gold plates, earrings shaped like crocodiles, bells, bone flutes, and I never thought I'd say this out loud in my life, but there was also a skirt made out of dog teeth. Yeah, dog teeth. As for who was buried there, they're calling him the Lord of the Flutes, but he actually wasn't alone. Archaeologists say up to 31 other people were sacrificed and buried with him. The tomb was completely hidden under the jungle and totally untouched. And the level of gold and craftsmanship here was impressive. One researcher said the discovery had, quote, incalculable historical and cultural value, end quote. Now, this wasn't the kind of place archaeologists expected to find a burial like this. It's not one of the major empires like the Aztec or Maya. It's just a small group living out in the jungle. So how did this much gold end up here? And who was this guy? No one's really sure, but it definitely makes you wonder how much we still don't know
about ancient civilizations hiding out in the rainforest. This wasn't even supposed to be a discovery. In 2024, a grad student named Luke Ald Thomas was going through some old LiDAR data, basically laser scans of the jungle done to check on forest health, nothing to do with archaeology in this case. But then he noticed something odd. There were strange lines, big rectangles, stuff that didn't look natural at all. And it turns out he just found an entire lost Maya city that no one had any idea existed. They're calling it Valeriana, and it's massive. There are over 6,000 buildings with pyramids, ball courts, plazas, roads, and a water system. And the wildest part is that it was just sitting under the trees the whole time. Experts think as many as 50,000 people lived there around 750 to 850 CE, and somehow this whole place got completely forgotten. It's like if someone found a major city the size of San Francisco completely covered in forest and just nobody noticed it for over 1,000 years. That's how unexplored this part of the jungle is. In 2023, archaeologist Ivan Sprayitz and his team were deep in the Mexican jungle, just hacking through trees with machetes, and that's when they came across something massive. It was an entire lost Maya city totally swallowed by the forest. They'd set out to see what was up after scanning the forest with LiDAR. They named the place Acomtun, which means stone column in the Yucatec Maya language, and that's because this place is filled with giant stone pillars. They found pyramids, ceremonial plazas, altars, carved staircases, and a ball court, all built high up on natural terraces to keep everything above flood level. According to Sprayitz, when we got there, our suspicions were confirmed. Architecturally, it was truly massive. They think Acomtun was at its peak between 600 and 900, the late classic Maya period. It's probably a pretty important city, but obviously, at some point, it was abandoned and totally forgotten. And it just sat there for over 1,000 years, buried under layers of trees and vines. So back in 2015, scientists exploring the Mesquite jungle in Honduras found something that for a long time had only been a legend. A lost city buried deep in the rainforest, filled with stone sculptures of jaguars, half-human creatures, thrones, all kinds of ceremonial objects. They nicknamed it the City of the Jaguar. This place is interesting because it lines up with old stories about La Ciudad Blanca, or the White City, a legendary place that's been part of folklore for ages. Just nobody had any proof it existed. The whole thing started with a LiDAR scan. They noticed straight lines under the trees, so a team led by archaeologist Christopher Fisher and filmmaker Steve Elkins went to check it out, and they found what Fisher called the most undisturbed site he'd ever been part of. He told National Geographic, "This is not like finding a pot in a museum. It's the whole site with context intact, and that's incredibly rare." Another archaeologist, Oscar Neil Cruz from the Honduran Institute of Anthropology, called it one of the greatest archaeological discoveries of the 21st century. Strangely, no one knows exactly who built this place. It's not Maya. It's like an entire culture just rose up, built this city, then disappeared without a trace. Now these are weird. Tiny gold artifacts found in Colombia made by the Cumbaya people over 1,000 years ago. They look suspiciously like airplanes. They've got wings, tail fins, some even have what looks like landing gear, and yes, they're made entirely of gold. Archaeologists say they're probably stylized animals like birds, bats, or insects, but still, some of these things look a little too aerodynamic. That's why people call them the Cumbaya airplanes. They've built models based on these designs, scaled them up, and guess what? A few of them actually flew. Now, to be clear, again, most researchers still say they're just abstract animal figures, but I mean, it's hard not to at least wonder, how did a pre-Columbian jungle culture make gold figurines that just so happen to resemble modern jets and are aerodynamic enough to actually fly when scaled up in some cases? Either these are some really creative animal carvings, or the Cumbaya knew something that we didn't. Deep in the jungles of northern Guatemala is El Mirador, an ancient city-state that was once home to over 1 million people. El Mirador is huge. It's one of the largest and oldest Maya cities. What's really cool about it, though, are the roads. There's a 150-mile network of ancient highways. They were rediscovered in 1967 by British explorer Ian Graham, who published a map of the site. Then in 2006, researchers used lasers to scan the Mirador Basin from the sky, and they were able to create 3D images that showed this system of roads, pyramids, and canals. The highways themselves were massive, with raised causeways 20 feet high. What's wild is that these roads were built between 600 BCE and 100 CE. They would have helped move supplies and people across this vast city. These ancient roads are part of what make El Mirador one of the most sophisticated ancient civilizations in the Americas. What you're looking at here is the mysterious Monk's Mound in Illinois, part of the Cahokia Mounds. The mounds were part of an ancient city, home to the Mississippian people between 1050 and 1350 CE. Cahokia once had a population of 15,000 to 20,000 people, and it was a marvel of engineering and planning. The site now contains about 80 mounds, but the original city had around 120. The mounds were used for everything from ceremonial purposes to housing elite rulers. The most famous mound, Monk's Mound, is the largest in North America, standing 10 stories tall and covering 14 acres. Pretty bizarre, you have an ancient pyramid right in the middle of Illinois. Cahokia was the largest pre-Columbian city north of Mexico, and one of the most complex archaeological sites in the US. The city's original name has unfortunately been lost to time, but the mounds were named after the Cahokia tribe, a group that lived nearby when French explorers arrived in the 17th century. Uxmal in the Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico is one of the most important cities of the Maya civilization. It's a site full of massive structures, but one of the standouts here is the Pyramid of the Magician, also called the House of the Dwarf. Legend has it that a dwarf, who hatched from an egg, built the pyramid in a single night. In reality, the pyramid was built in the 6th century, but it's still an impressive feat, standing 115 feet tall. The pyramid is the largest building in Uxmal, with 5 levels and multiple temples inside. The Maya often built new structures on top of older ones, and Temple 4, one of the top temples in the pyramid, has 12 stone masks around its doorway, thought to represent Chak, the rain god. The governor's palace, another giant structure, covers over 12,000 square feet. You'll also find ancient roads that connect Uxmal to other Maya cities like Tikal and even Caracol in Belize. Today, Uxmal is an UNESCO World Heritage Site, and it's easy to see why. Chichen Itza is one of the most famous and impressive ancient Maya cities, located in the heart of Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula once again. At one time, it was a busy place full of religious ceremonies, politics, and trade. At its peak, it was home to around 35,000 people. It was built in a perfect spot near a bunch of natural sinkholes that provided plenty of water. In fact, the name Chichen Itza comes from the Mayan words chi, mouth, chen, wells, and Itza, which was the name of the Mayan tribe who settled there at the time. Chichen Itza was founded in the 6th century, but it really reached its height during the 10th century when it was influenced by the Toltec people from central Mexico. One of the most famous buildings here is El Castillo, the pyramid at the center of the site. At 79 feet tall, it has 365 steps, one for each day of the year, and during the spring and autumn equinoxes, the shadows create this illusion of a serpent slithering down the stairs. Machu Picchu is one of the most iconic ancient structures in the entire world, sitting high in the Peruvian Andes and nearly 8,000 feet above sea level. It's a 15th century Inca citadel, often called the Lost City of the Incas, and for good reason. It was mostly hidden from the outside world until 1911, when American historian Hiram Bingham rediscovered it. The site is mind-blowing to say the least. It was built in the classical Inca style with perfectly fitted dry stone walls, and its 3 main structures, the Temple of the Sun, the Temple of the 3 Windows, and the Intihuatana, are still standing. The Inca never wrote anything down though, so no one really knows exactly what Machu Picchu was for. The leading theory is that it was a private retreat for the Inca emperor, but built around 1450. Some archaeologists think it was more of a royal estate, but we still don't really know. Machu Picchu was abandoned by the Inca around 100 years later, just before the Spanish conquest. Let's start with one of Australia's most mysterious legends, the bunyip. This creature has supposedly been haunting the swamps, rivers, and billabongs of Australia for centuries. The word bunyip is said to mean devil or evil spirit in some Aboriginal languages, and as you can imagine, that's because this thing is not friendly. The bunyip is often described as this big, terrifying creature, though what it looks like exactly changes depending on who you ask. Some say it's got a more dog-like face, a horse tail with flippers. Other descriptions are more walrus-like. The appearance varies, but the bunyip is more known for how it sounds. It's said to make this low, booming cry that's been reported by people who claim to have heard it in the dead of night. European settlers started hearing about the bunyip in the 1800s. There's a story from 1845 about a man who found some bones near Geelong. When he showed them to an Aboriginal person, the guy immediately recognized them as belonging to a bunyip. This got people talking, and soon enough, there were reports of people being attacked by this creature, with some saying the bunyip would hug its prey to death. Next up is the Orang Mawa. There are legends of giant ape-like creatures all over the world. You got Sasquatch, Yeti, the skunk ape. While in Malaysia, they have the Orang Mawa. This bipedal ape is said to live in the jungle of Johor. It's about 10 feet tall and covered in thick black fur. Sightings of the creature go back centuries. The first documented sighting was in 1871. In terms of more recent sightings though, back in 1995, people talked about finding big footprints with 4 toes. Then in November of 2005, there was a big fuss when 3 workers busy clearing land for a pond claimed that they saw a Mawa family, 2 grown-ups and a youngling strolling near the Kinshin River. After that, they discovered some pretty big footprints, one of them measuring 18 inches apparently. A photo of a new footprint in tar, supposedly from the Mawas, made it into Malaysian newspapers in January of 2006. Batutut. Now, this is basically Borneo's version of Bigfoot. I promise this whole list will not just be big, hairy ape creatures, but it will not be the last either. Batutut, also known as the Bornean Orang Pendek, is a cryptid said to roam the jungles of Borneo, described as a humanoid creature standing around 7 feet tall. It has long, dark hair covering its body. Witnesses often say it looks a bit like an orangutan, but more human. Sightings of this creature have been reported for centuries, but the indigenous people of Borneo, mostly in the remote rainforests, the creature is said to move fast and is elusive and shy. And hey, I've said it before, I'll say it again. If there's a species of big, hairy ape creatures roaming around somewhere on the planet, I could see them living in this part of the world. The jungle's just vast, dense, teeming with life. Hey, why not, right? Alright, moving away from tall, hairy monsters for a moment to talk about short, hairless monsters, or aliens. Would aliens be considered monsters? I don't know, I'd call them monsters. Would you? Let us know down in the comments. These are important questions that must be answered. Alright, anyway, this photo you're looking at here was taken by a man named Michael Cohen. It was 2011 when 2 tourists were exploring the Amazon region in Brazil near Manaus, and they snapped this photo. The picture, taken by a writer named Michael Cohen, showed what really looks to be an alien being lurking in the background. The creature in the photo doesn't look like any known animal. It's humanoid, but not quite human, and its shape is unlike any life form that we know. What makes the whole thing even creepier, though, is the fact that the Manaus region is known for having a lot of UFO sightings. People have reported seeing strange lights and crafts in the sky for years, and some think it may be that aliens are interested in all the animal and plant life. It would make sense. I mean, if we had the technology to explore other planets, we'd probably want to study the areas that were the most rich in biodiversity. Another interesting thing, the Brazilian government apparently conducted a secret investigation called Operation Prato in the late 70s. The army was sent to monitor the area for alien activity after reports of UFOs started coming in. The operation was kept under wraps for decades, but it was eventually declassified, revealing that the government had been seriously looking into UFOs and possibly alien encounters in the region. What you're looking at here is footage of one of the last surviving thylacines, aka the Tasmanian tiger. This animal was once found all over Tasmania, Australia, and New Guinea, but it was declared extinct in the 1930s. Is it actually extinct though? The thylacine was a carnivore with a stiff kangaroo-like tail and had a pouch just like a marsupial. The creature was a bit of a mystery even back in its day. It was a very rare animal, so rare it was actually thought to be a legend. So it was pretty incredible when these things were actually found to exist, just in really small numbers. And after the last known one died in captivity in 1936, people thought that they were just gone for good. But stories of thylacine sightings have been popping up for decades. There have been reports from locals, hikers, even hunters who claim to have spotted the animal roaming the wilds of Tasmania. Some say they've seen it darting through the bush or crossing roads late at night. One of the most compelling reasons people think the thylacine could still be alive is, well, for one, it used to be alive, and the fact that Tasmania is so remote. The island is full of thick, rugged forests and mountains, places that are hard to explore thoroughly, so it's not completely out of the question that a few of these animals could have managed to stay hidden from humans. It's not just locals who believe in these things' survival either. Some scientists, conservationists, and cryptozoologists also agree, citing strange footage and unclear animal tracks found in the wild. There's even a documentary on the subject, with people traveling deep into the Tasmanian wilderness looking for proof. Let's talk about a creepy legend from the Hawaiian Islands, the Night Marchers. These spirits are said to be the vengeful ghosts of ancient Hawaiian warriors, and they're rumored to haunt certain areas of the islands, especially at night. And if you cross their path, you're in serious trouble. A pretty eerie story comes from a woman named Kay Borles, who was running a 100-mile endurance race through the Hawaiian rainforests in 2019. The race, known as the Hurt 100, is intense. It's a 20-mile loop through dense, muddy trails, and you gotta run it 5 times, because that's how math works. While running with her friend Cassie, who was taking photos to document the run, Borles unknowingly captured something strange in one of the pictures. When they looked at one of the photos later that night, they spotted a figure standing in the background, a figure neither of them had seen while running. Borles took to Reddit to share what happened, saying, "Notice the figure in the frame to the left of my head? We never saw anyone passing us, and there were no statues along the trail. It is not photoshopped or made. This is legit." After doing some research, she and her friend believe they might have seen one of the Night Marchers. According to Hawaiian legend, anyone who locks eyes with a Night Marcher will die violently unless they lie down and show respect. Fortunately for Borles, she didn't see anything directly.
Number 4. Bone fragments. Giant of Castle No refers to 3 bone fragments, a humerus, tibia, and femoral midshaft, discovered by George Vacher de Leponge in 1890. According to de Leponge, the fossil bones may have belonged to one of the largest humans known to have existed. He estimated from the bone size that the human may have been about 11 feet 6 inches tall. His findings were published in the journal La Nature in 1890. The bones were dated to the Neolithic period, since they were found at the very bottom of the Bronze Age burial tumulus. Writing in the journal La Nature, de Leponge describes the bones in detail. "I think it's unnecessary to note that these bones are undeniably human, despite their enormous size. The first is the middle part of the shaft of a femur, 14 centimeters in length, and the circumference of the bone is 16 centimeters. The second piece is a middle and upper part of the shaft of a tibia. The circumference is 13 centimeters, and the length of the fragment is 26 centimeters. The third, very singular, was regarded as the lower part of the humerus. The volumes of the bones were more than double the normal pieces to which they correspond. Judging by the usual intervals of anatomical points, they also involve lengths almost double. The bones of the giant were studied at the University of Montpellier and examined by M. Sabater, professor of zoology, and M. Delage, a professor of paleontology. In 1892, the bones were studied carefully by Dr. Paul Louis Andre Keener, professor of pelagical anatomy at Montpellier School of Medicine, for which he admitted they represented a very tall race, but nevertheless found them abnormal in dimensions and apparently of morbid growth. Number 3. On a Mountain. In November 2022, a TikTok user named Painting with Lizards posted a video of a giant on a mountaintop in Mexico. Yes, Mexico again. They claim that they post all kinds of creepy content. Their video has the text "Giant spotted on the hills of Mexico. Is this the legendary Nephilim?" The video shows the side of a hill with many houses. On top of the hill, there appears to be a giant walking around. This being seems huge, too big to be a normal human being. A commenter said, "The fact that you can see it clearly from right there, no normal human can be seen like that. That monster has to be at least 20 feet tall." Now, this is the third time a giant has been spotted in Mexico, and I'm honestly starting to believe it. All 3 sightings were in different areas, which to me makes it seem more believable. Do you think there's a giant in Mexico? Let me know in the comments down below. Number 2. North America. Over 1,000 accounts of 7-foot and taller skeletons have reportedly been unearthed from ancient burial sites over a 200-year period in North America. Newspaper accounts, towns and county histories, letters, scientific journals, diaries, photos, and Smithsonian ethnology reports have carefully documented this. These skeletons have been reported from coast to coast with strange atomic anomalies such as double rows of teeth, jawbones so large as to fit over the face of the finder, and elongated skulls, documented in virtually every state. Smithsonian scientists identified at least 17 skeletons that stood over 7 feet in their annual reports, including one example that was 8 feet tall, and a skull with a 36-inch circumference reported from Anna, Illinois in the Smithsonian Annual Report of 1873. Now, an average human skull is about 20 inches in circumference for reference. The Smithsonian Institution is mentioned dozen more times as the recipient of enormous skeletons from across the entire United States. And coming in at number 1 is the giant in Canada. Okay, so this isn't a jungle, but TikToker Andrew Dawson posted a video of a giant in May 2022 sitting on top of a mountain in Canada. He zooms into a mountain and there you can see a large person. Andrew calls it a giant, and I agree with him because there's no way that that is a human. It wouldn't be that big. After his post, he reported having interactions with the CIA and Canadian CSIS, as well as claims to being stalked after the post. He also uploaded a post entitled "I'm Scared," where he informed viewers that they might not see him post ever again, but that everything was true. He then posted another TikTok of what appears to be military vehicles on top of the mountain where he saw the giant, which is just suspicious. Since that post, Andrew has not been seen on TikTok or any other form of social media, sparking plenty of theories about his whereabouts. His videos have gained millions of views, but suddenly the comments were turned off. Now, with this being TikTok, things have gotten pretty wacky, but it seems that the full story may never be told. Andrew's obituary was actually posted, indicating that he passed away, leaving family members behind, but did he fake his death? Was it a setup? His video seems so real, but his behavior with everything was frightening. Did the government do this to hide the fact that there are giants? Who knows?
In the deep Belizean jungle at a Maya site called Luminai, archaeologists started finding copper tools, stuff like bells, tweezers, fish hooks, which is already strange, considering the Maya weren't big on metalwork, and finding them this far inland was especially weird. Most of the copper wasn't local. Instead, it was traced back to places hundreds of miles away, mainly in western and central Mexico. This proves that the ancient Maya were part of a huge trade network. The copper items were clearly considered rare, valuable, used for rituals and trade, and they totally mess with the old idea that the Maya didn't care about metal until the Spanish showed up. Also, goes to show just how connected these societies were. As one researcher, Geoffrey Braswell, put it, the finds show how, quote, Mesoamerican societies were much more interconnected than we previously believed. It's not just that the tools are interesting, it's how they got there. These were jungle cities with no wheels, no horses, nothing like that, but they still managed to trade for copper from hundreds of miles away. This one kinda looks like nothing, I mean just an old bone at first glance, but the Ashango bone, found near the headwaters of the Nile close to the Congo jungle, is over 20,000 years old. It might be the oldest known math tool. It's a small bone, probably from a baboon, with carved notches grouped into patterns. Scientists noticed some of the marks seem to show multiplication, division, prime numbers. One column shows numbers like 11, 13, 17, and 19, which is not random. Dirk Hoylebroek, a Belgian mathematician who studied it, wrote, "The structure of the markings is clearly purposeful. This is evidence of a prehistoric number sense," end quote. Now, not everyone agrees on what the bone was used for. Some think it was a lunar calendar. Others say a tally stick, but either way, it's way more advanced than anyone expected for that time. It was found in 1960 near the Semliki River in modern-day Democratic Republic of the Congo, and is now housed in a museum in Brussels. Alright, so this one is controversial. The Ica stones are a bunch of smooth black rocks with carvings on them, found near Ica, Peru. Some show normal stuff like animals, but others show people using telescopes, doing surgery and interacting with dinosaurs. A farmer named Basilio Uchuya claimed he found them in a cave in the 60s. He admitted to faking some of them, but then he said he was forced to say that to avoid prison for selling antiques. So the whole thing's a mess. Most experts say the stones are modern fakes, especially since no one's ever found them in a properly documented dig. The Peruvian government officially labeled them as hoaxes, but for some reason they still keep popping up in museums and conspiracy videos. And hey, I'm one to talk, but I find these things kind of compelling. Are they definitive proof that history was very different than mainstream science would have you believe? No. Are they weird enough to get my attention though? Absolutely. For years, scientists thought the Amazon was mostly just uncharted wilderness, but when deforestation and LiDAR scans started peeling back the trees, they showed hundreds of huge geometric shapes carved into the land. Circles, squares, straight roads, way too precise to be natural. A 2022 study in Science described over 450 of these geoglyphs in the Acre region of Brazil. They're estimated to be up to 2,000 years old. The shapes were made by clearing forest and digging deep ditches. Not easy work without modern equipment. And what makes it even more interesting is that there are no large ruins nearby like pyramids or cities. These things were just out in the middle of nowhere. In 2021, archaeologists digging at Xingshui, an ancient ruin site in southern China, pulled a massive gold mask out of a sacrificial pit. This place has been turning up weird stuff for decades, but this mask got a lot of attention. It's over 3,000 years old, has big staring eyes, huge ears, and a thin little mouth carved into it. It weighs about half a pound. It doesn't match the usual style of Chinese artifacts from that time though. It's not from the Shang dynasty or any of the big name cultures you usually hear about. It came from the Shu civilization, a lost culture that we still know very little about. No one really knows why they buried all this stuff in deep pits or why their art looks so different from everything else around it. Vilcabamba in Peru, often called the lost city of the Incas as well, was the final stronghold of the Inca Empire. It was the capital of the Neo-Inca state from 1539 until its fall in 1572. It was the last base of Incan resistance against Spanish invaders. The city's remote jungle location made it nearly impossible for the Spanish to reach, allowing the Incas to hold out for decades here. Its ruins were hidden for centuries. In 1911, explorer Hiram Bingham mistakenly identified Machu Picchu as Vilcabamba, but years later explorers, including Jean Savoy in the 60s, found that the real site was actually this one here. For decades, the Spanish struggled to locate the city, with one chronicler writing, "Great resources are needed to undertake a penetration of that land." But the city was finally captured in 1572, leading to the execution of the last Inca monarch. Yaxchilan is an ancient Mayan city found deep in the jungles of southern Mexico, along the Usumacinta River. It was one of the most powerful cities in the Maya world between the 4th and 9th centuries. The city is probably most famous for its huge acropolis, a collection of buildings that includes temples, palaces, and ceremonial areas. The site is also packed with all these incredible reliefs that tell us quite a bit about the Maya life, their gods, and the rituals that they would have performed. Yaxchilan's remote location helped it stay hidden for centuries, and it wasn't until the 19th century that explorers started to rediscover it. One of the coolest things about this place is how the jungle has slowly started reclaiming the city, giving it this kind of lost feel to it. And next on the list we have geoglyphs. In the Amazon rainforest, large-scale geoglyphs, which are these ancient formations created by removing topsoil, have been discovered over the years. They're basically these colossal drawings carved into the earth, some stretching over 600 feet. They're in all kinds of shapes, circles, squares, some depict animals even. And researchers believe these geoglyphs were constructed between 2,000 and 6,500 years ago by indigenous tribes. As to their purpose though, that's still mostly a mystery. There are theories. Maybe they are used for ceremonial or religious practices, or maybe they had a more practical function like water management or defense, but the sheer scale of these things and the effort it would have required to create them definitely raises a lot of questions about what these tribes were capable of. Calakmul is an ancient Maya city deep in the jungles of southern Mexico, in the Yucatan Peninsula once again, and it was one of the largest and most powerful Maya cities, especially during the Classic period, around 600 to 700 CE. Found near the Guatemalan border, Calakmul was a major player in the Maya world, often locked in competition with other city-states like Tikal, which we covered in part 1, so check that out if you haven't already. The city is massive, covering more than 70 square kilometers, but it's most famous for its massive pyramids. The largest pyramid, known as Structure 1, stands over 145 feet tall and is one of the tallest Maya pyramids ever discovered. It's so big that it even dwarfs other pyramids in the region. Teotihuacan is one of the most impressive and mysterious ancient cities in Mesoamerica, sitting just 25 miles northeast of modern Mexico City. At its peak, it was the largest city in the Americas, with a population that could have reached up to 125,000 people, making it one of the world's biggest cities during its time. The city is famous for its massive pyramids, the Pyramid of the Sun and the Pyramid of the Moon. These monuments are massive, the Pyramid of the Sun standing at 200 feet high, making it one of the largest pyramids in the world. But Teotihuacan has more than just those giant stone structures. It also had a sophisticated layout with multi-family apartment complexes, wide avenues, and intricate murals that now give us a glimpse into the daily life of the people who once lived there, and the place had a lot of influence on places surrounding it too. The city's obsidian tools were highly prized across Mesoamerica, and evidence of its presence has been found as far away as the Maya region. Its cultural impact was huge. The later Aztecs even saw Teotihuacan as their spiritual ancestors and adopted some aspects of their culture into their own. Teotihuacan was established around 100 BCE, but mysteriously collapsed in the 6th century. Tapir Awara is a legendary creature the size of a cow, believed to stalk the Amazon rainforest. A territorial, aggressive creature said to attack people in boats. The creature is described as a mix between a tapir and a jaguar, but is it just a mythical monster or a new species waiting to be discovered? Witnesses say the creatures are about 9 feet long with red or red-gold fur and occasionally blackish-gray fur with white patches or stripes. Its face is kind of cat-like, but without the spots you'd expect from a jaguar. Instead, it has large drooping ears, more like a cow, and legs that look like they belong to a donkey. Some sightings even describe it having a mix of paws and hooves. It's also semi-aquatic, often seen in the swamps and creeks of the Amazon, swimming or standing in the water. It's also said to be carnivorous with large razor-sharp teeth. There are tales of it capturing caimans and even rumors that it could eat humans. The creature is also described slapping its ears against the water, similar to how a beaver would use its tail. The Amazon jungle is vast enough that new species are being discovered there all the time. Most of them a lot smaller than a cow-sized predatory animal, but there's a lot of unexplored land, you never know. The Holadera is a lake monster, which was said to be spotted by biologist and freshwater detective Jeremy Wade. Wade first saw this creature in the Brazilian Amazon basin in 1993. He was out on a small boat fishing when he spotted this serpentine creature poking out of the water, and it had ridges on its back. He told some locals about what he'd seen, and nobody really believed him, but a year later he returned to the spot and ended up speaking to a man who also claimed to have seen a similar creature just a couple weeks before. Wade went out on another trek to try and spot the creature, and he did. Getting a closer look though, he figured that it was maybe just an Amazon River dolphin, with the ridges on the back possibly coming from it being injured by propeller blades, or having been deliberately mutilated by a fisherman. But it's not 100% certain if this is the case, or if there was actually some unknown creature out there. The Mapinguari is said to be a massive hairy creature, almost like a gigantic ground sloth, that stalks the rainforest and has been described by native tribes for hundreds and hundreds of years. Many tribes in the rainforest, even those not in contact, tell tales of a massive creature roughly 7 to 8 feet tall, emitting a powerful odor that can disorient hunters. Described as either roaring or fetid, this creature is known as the Mapinguari. Researchers have organized expeditions to try and find this rainforest giant, but no bones or scat samples have ever been discovered. Some scientists speculate that the Mapinguari legends might be rooted in ancient encounters with the last giant ground sloths in the Amazon, possibly dating back around 10,000 years, when these sloths are believed to have become extinct. If this extinction date is inaccurate though, the interactions with humans might have occurred more recently. Now, there are cryptid stories from all around the world, lake monsters, tons of variations of Bigfoot, we've covered tons of them on the channel, but when it comes to cryptids in the Amazon, it's really not that far-fetched. Again, the Amazon forest is just massive and dense. A majority of it is just unexplored, and it could be filled with tons of animal species that are still unknown to the scientific world. But away from the cryptids for a bit, the black caiman is actually known to exist. The Amazon's biggest known predator, an enormous crocodilian that can grow over 16 feet long, weighing in at around 1,000 pounds. Yikes. They prowl rivers and lakes in search of fish, smaller reptiles, and even larger mammals given the opportunity. Female black caimans are dedicated moms. They build nests along the riverbanks and fiercely guard their eggs until they hatch. So if you do happen to be traveling along the Amazon River and you come across a baby caiman, just get out of there as fast as you can. As scary and dangerous as these animals are though, they're important for the ecosystem. They help keep aquatic life in balance, controlling the populations of their prey, which is why poaching of these crocs is such a major issue. They are an endangered species, and not only is that sad on its own, it's also affected the population of animals like piranhas and capybaras. There's just too many of them, and that's now negatively affecting agriculture and livestock. The Brazilian wandering spider is one of the most venomous spiders in the world. They're highly venomous. Their bites can cause excruciating pain and can even be fatal to humans. What makes these spiders really interesting is their hunting style. Unlike many spiders that just sit and wait for prey to come to them, the Brazilian wandering spider wanders around in search of prey. They're proactive about where they get their food. They're nocturnal hunters roaming around at night chasing down insects, amphibians, and even small mammals like mice. And if you're unlucky enough to be camping out in the jungle, you may have one of these things crawl into your tent. The females are very protective. They keep a close eye on their egg sacs and take care of their spiderlings once they hatch. Physically, these spiders are about as terrifying as they sound, big and hairy, and on top of that, they're known for being very fast and agile, often sprinting and pouncing on their prey. And the last thing I ever want to see a big hairy spider do is pounce. The biggest uncontacted tribe on Earth is deep in Peru's Amazon. They're called the Mashco-Piro, hunter-gatherers who vanished into the jungle hundreds of years ago to escape the violence during the rubber boom, and they just stayed out of sight ever since. Their language is a very old dialect of the Piro language, which is loosely related to what nearby Yine people speak. Yine can understand maybe 80%, so there's some overlap, but a lot of it is completely foreign to linguists because outsiders never properly studied it. No one really knows how many of them there are, but experts think it's somewhere around 750 people, and most have had zero contact with the outside world. They avoid outsiders like the plague, literally, since disease is a big threat to them. Recently, some Mashco-Piro have started showing up along rivers and near logging areas, probably because illegal deforestation is pushing into their territory, but still, no one's had enough time with them to actually study their language. So it's one of those rare cases where we know the language exists, but we have no idea what they're saying. The Corubo live way out in the Havari Valley in Brazil, right at the edge of the Amazon near the border with Peru. This place is so deep in the rainforest, it might as well be another planet. The tribe is famously private, they don't want contact, and they don't need it. Most of what we know about them comes from a single small group that had brief contact back in the 90s. They speak what's known as the Panoan language, part of a group of indigenous languages spoken in the Amazon, mostly across Peru, Brazil, and Bolivia, but nobody's recorded the full version, not even close. A dialect spoken by the uncontacted Corubo is completely undocumented. A few words were picked up from the small group that had contact, but those people had already been isolated for so long that even their dialect was different from neighboring groups. The Corubo have been called the clubbers because they carry these huge wooden clubs and aren't shy about using them to keep outsiders away. And you can't really blame them. When contact does happen, it usually leads to sickness or worse. The Awa are another isolated group in the Brazilian Amazon, and they're about as hard to find as it gets. Out of the roughly 350 Awa still around, at least 100 are what they call uncontacted, meaning they live completely off the grid. They're hunter-gatherers, super mobile, and known to pack up and move at the first sign of trouble. They use a language called Kwaja, which is technically part of a larger family of languages, so it's related to a bunch of other indigenous languages in Brazil, but the version the uncontacted Awa speak is totally different. Nobody's recorded it, no one's written it down, and the people who speak it, well, they're off the grid, so even the other Awa groups who've had some contact, the dialects just vary so much that it's tough to pin anything down. They don't just avoid outsiders, they avoid pretty much everyone, even other indigenous groups. So the chances of anyone sitting down and studying their language is very, very unlikely. In the middle of Ecuador's Yasuni National Park, one of the most biodiverse jungles on Earth, there are two groups, the Tigiri and the Taramanane, who've completely cut themselves off from the outside world. They're part of the larger Huaorani family, but they split off decades ago. They're known as voluntarily isolated, and the Ecuadorian government has laws in place to protect that. So about their language, since they're related to the Huaorani, it's assumed they speak something similar, but nobody's actually studied it, and no one's had any kind of extended contact to even confirm that. The only thing we really know is that it's different enough that even the Huaorani who do have occasional contact can't fully understand it. Most of what we know comes from neighboring indigenous people and rare reports from illegal loggers who had run-ins with them. The Chito Nohua live in the Peruvian rainforest in a remote area called the Marunahawa Reserve. Even locals don't go unless they have a really good reason. They've managed to stay mostly uncontacted, and they move around a lot, which makes them nearly impossible to track. When it comes to their language, it's part of the Panoan family, same as a few other tribes in the region, but the Chitonahua version is unknown to outsiders. There's no written record of it, and there are no recordings. The few times they've been seen or heard by other people, the language they speak has stood out as different, even from other Panoan speakers. The little we do know has come from brief encounters with nearby tribes. That's basically it. Because they've stayed so hidden and avoid contact at all costs, linguists just haven't had a chance to study their language. So we know it exists, we know it probably is related to other languages, but beyond that, we really got nothing. The Nukak are one of the last nomadic peoples left in Colombia, living between dense rainforest and armed conflict zones. They were only officially discovered in the 80s, and right away it became clear their world is nothing like the one we know. They still use blowguns, they travel in these small bands, they speak a language called Nukak. It's a tonal language, and so this is really cool. It means that a tiny change in pitch can totally flip the meaning of a word, so even if someone tried to guess at it, they'd probably get it completely wrong. Some linguists who worked with recently settled Nukak have managed to write down basic phrases and grammar rules, but the people still living nomadically, that version of language could be wildly different. Because of guerrilla fighting, logging, and coca farms moving in, a lot of these communities ended up scattered. Some groups managed to hang on to the way they've always spoken, but others, especially the ones near towns, have started to lose it. So now the language is kind of split off into different versions, and some of those aren't even spoken anywhere else. If you ran into someone deep in the forest speaking the old version, there's a pretty good chance even the Nukak wouldn't fully understand it.
10. Mystery spider. Yeah, for this first one, we're not even sure what kind of spider it is. How calming is that? Let's do it. Some kind of spider is making what's referred to as silkhenge. Yeah, this piece of spider art was first discovered back in 2013 by Troy Alexander, who posted a photo of it on the internet, asking for help in identifying what exactly he's looking at, but no one could help identify it because it's a totally unknown phenomenon. These structures are created by spiders or some sort of spider to help with reproduction because they're protecting their eggs. It looks quite alien, but this is all just to protect little baby spiders in that middle tip. There's one main spire that's constructed of spider silk, and that's where the eggs are contained, and then surrounding that spire is a sort of a circular fence that is also made of spider silk. Similar appearance to Stonehenge, hence the name Silkhenge. But to this day, we haven't found much. This was discovered back in 2013, and only a year ago, we got more information. Tropical science communicator Phil Torres recently visited Peru, and he got footage in 4K. It's beautiful. We no longer have to slide through the same 3 grainy photos. Check this out. Torres explains how this research has affected his well-being, obviously. He said it's the thing that keeps him up at night because it's so annoyingly hard to find. Despite having seen it in so many places he goes, the next time it's like it was never there at all. Yeah, that's frustrating. It's also tiny too. And this recent clip, it's beautiful, again, high definition, you can really see how intricate the work is, but Torres also discovered that these things are tiny and they come in clusters. So if you find one, there's probably a few nearby. Also, don't destroy it. We still have no idea who or what's making these silk henges, so take some photos, hang out a bit, do some research. Number 9, the Brazilian wandering spider. Its bite can give you an erection that lasts for hours. That's a real fact, and that's how I'm going to start this point here. This animal is dangerous. Its bite, of course, will hurt you. You'll be sweating, blood pressure will increase, hence that side effect. They're more commonly known as banana spiders, so guess I can't eat bananas anymore. There goes my favorite snack. These little guys have been listed as the world's most venomous spider in a handful of years in the Guinness Book of World Records. We love records, record-breaking spiders. If its name didn't already tip you off, these things can be found in Brazil. There's 8 different kinds of wandering spiders. Avoid them all. That's my advice here on MA 10. That's it. How does that sound? Boom. Science is quite interesting here. They're trying to create the next Viagra using the spider's venom. That's why I started with that wild side effect. There's always a point to it. I'm not just being silly all the time. The future is here, friends, and apparently it's filled with spiders. Just cuts to a bunch of old dudes in the woods just hanging out like, please. Number 8. Bullet ants. They're called bullet ants because their bite feels like a bullet wound. Promising start. Awesome. They're also referred to as the Paraponera clavata, but that sounds like a dark curse in Harry Potter, so we're going to call them the bullet ant for now. They're commonly found in tropical rainforests in Central and South America. Their sting is considered, the most powerful in the world, hence the bullet thing, and its effects can last 24 hours. Yeah, another fun nickname for them is a 24-hour ant. They're also the world's largest ant, so you can really see it coming. You should see it coming, worst case scenario. These guys get you in a colony though, game over. There's a good chance you won't even survive at all. One bite is bad enough, let alone a colony. Its venom's so powerful, it's being studied right now for its use as a pesticide. Yeah, we're sacrificing ants to further our research on how to sacrifice ants. This is dark. That sounds pretty dark when you say it like that. There's actually an indigenous Amazonian tribe in Brazil, and they use bullet ant stings as part of a ceremonial process to become a warrior. I would not pass. I wouldn't even make it to the island. I'm not good with bugs. They have to keep a straight face the entire time whilst getting bit. That's so impressive. Number 7, dart frog. You may be thinking, thank God, a frog, something cute, something unlike the bullet ant. Guess again. Not this time. Small but mighty, the poison dart frog is one of the deadliest animals on Earth. I left the word poison out of the title. I juked you out. I did it on purpose. Its shiny yellow skin will certainly attract the eye, but if you decide to try and, catch one of these slippery boys, its poison can kill 10 fully grown adults. All bad. Indigenous hunters figured this out and they coated the tips of their arrows or darts in this toxin. The toxin created naturally here is called batrachotoxin. Another creature we've mentioned on this channel before that also has the same toxin is the pitui bird. That's in Australia though, it's far away. Either way, a lot of poison moving around us in nature. It's actually pretty alarming. Birds and frogs, I'm just gonna stay home. I'm just gonna stay home and do this all day. Number 6, mosquitoes. These guys suck, no matter where you are, but when it comes to the Amazon, like everything else, it's much worse than you could ever imagine. Mosquitoes are one of the most dangerous because they can fly, and you don't see them coming. And once they get you, the damage has already been done. They're just full of blood. How gross is that? They're horrible. If you travel to parts of the Amazon rainforest and you don't have yellow fever vaccinations or extremely strong mosquito repellent, you're gonna have a bad time. These suckers are clouds of malaria just waiting for you to walk into by accident. And then you go, oh, and it's too late. Number 5, decoy spider. Oh, these are all horrible. These decoy building spiders are exceptionally small, but super smart. These spiders only measure to be about 5 millimeters in length, but you might see a much larger spider hanging out in a web that they've created. See, this might sound scary, but this large spider is actually a fake spider. It's a decoy. It's a decoy spider that the small spider built out of various materials like food scraps, debris, even their old skin to make a bigger, scarier spider. That's horrible. I wish I didn't know this. Look, art is subjective, okay, that's for sure. I don't think this is the most lovely piece of animal art on the planet, but it works. It gets the job done. A rather impressive defense mechanism for such a tiny little dude. These spiders were only discovered pretty recently, so again, not much is known about them, as there still needs to be tons of research done, just like the other horrible spider on this list. It is, however, believed that this is a feature that has evolved in this particular spider, so it's possible we've only recently discovered it because it's a new feature. Yeah, how neat is that? Hey, spiders are learning new tricks. Hit that thumbs up. I'm so scared. Cheers.
I mentioned piranha populations growing in the Amazon, so let's talk more about them. There's a reason these fish are notorious enough to have like 12 horror movies about them. They're known for their aggressive feeding habits. Piranhas can really go wild during what's called a feeding frenzy. They coordinate their bites though, taking turns on their prey until everyone in the school has had a share and their victim looks like a piece of Swiss cheese. Piranhas mostly eat other fish, but will also attack insects, crustaceans, and even small mammals. Piranhas they're kind of like zombies. Individually, not that scary, but a whole pack of them and you have a problem. And piranhas form schools that can number in the hundreds. It's safety in numbers, and it makes them more effective hunters. There's a lot of variety amongst piranha species as well, with some growing up to 16 inches, which is bigger than I thought. I also talked about the black caiman earlier, one of the deadliest predators in the Amazon. Do they have anyone to worry about? Well, yes they do. It's called the green anaconda, one of the largest snake species on the planet. There are longer snakes out there, but none are as heavy and thick as green anacondas. Females often reach up to 550 pounds, and they can grow over 29 feet long with a thickness of about 12 inches. These beasts rely on their incredible muscular strength to constrict and suffocate their prey before eating them whole. And their diet is pretty diverse, including animals like capybaras, deer, caimans again, and even jaguars. Another one of the most dangerous animals in the Amazon jungle. These snakes prefer shallower waters, which help them sneak up on their prey. Electric eels are some pretty shocking creatures. Another one of the most dangerous creatures in the Amazon. They can produce an output of 600 volts, about 5 times what it takes to incapacitate a human. They use this electric shock both for defense and to stun their prey, discharging all their electrolytes at once. It's a seriously impressive survival tactic, and it makes them incredibly terrifying. Plus, these things can grow up to 8 feet long and weigh around 40 pounds. They usually lurk at the bottom of the water where they hunt fish and small amphibians. Poison dart frogs are small, really beautiful looking frogs found in Central and South American rainforests. They have all these vibrant, striking colors, shades of bright blue, orange, yellow, black. But in nature, bright colors like this can sometimes hint at danger, and that's definitely the case here. Poison dart frogs are, unsurprisingly, very poisonous. They secrete poisonous toxins through their skin, making them one of the most poisonous creatures on Earth in general. There are lots of different species of this frog. One of the most poisonous is the golden poison frog, which is pure bright yellow. These frogs are very small, but they're very powerful in terms of toxicity. The toxins they produce are potent enough that just a single golden poison frog has the potential to take out as many as 20 men. That's nuts. The poison dart frog gets its name from the indigenous tribes of Central and South America who use the toxic secretions from these frogs to poison the tips of blow darts. By applying the frog's toxic slime to the dart tips, they turned their hunting tools into even deadlier weapons. Interestingly though, when in captivity away from their natural environment and diet, poison dart frogs actually lose their toxicity. They actually get their toxic powers from these foods that they're able to eat in the wild, like certain types of poisonous ants and mites. Finally, let's talk about all the legends of giant snakes slithering through the dense Amazon forest. Ones other than the green anaconda, even bigger. Massive sized anacondas do exist. Again, I guess every anaconda is technically massive, but there are legends about ones larger than any documented by science for thousands of years. One explorer who claimed to have come across one is Percy Harrison Fawcett, the guy who apparently found the lost city of Z. These giant snakes are often described as being over 40 feet in length and incredibly girthy. The longest known snake we have on record was a python measuring in at 32 feet. So while on an expedition in Bolivia, Fawcett claimed to have come face to face with one of these massive sized serpents. And not only that, he said he slayed the thing, which was approximately 62 feet long and at least 1 foot in diameter. Pretty outlandish, but I mean, what do you think? Was he just full of it? Or did they see a big snake and just misidentified its true length? The togatil live in the rainforests of Halmahera, one of Indonesia's lesser known islands. Most people haven't heard of the island, let alone the people living in the forests there. They built shelters from palm and bamboo, they hunt with bows, they keep their distance from just about everyone, including other nearby tribes. They speak a language that's believed to be a branch of Tobelo, which is used by people on the coast. But the togatil version has taken on a life of its own. There are 2 main groups of togatil, one that occasionally interacts with nearby villagers and one that doesn't. The group that still lives deep in the forest speaks a version of the language that's barely heard by outsiders. Linguists know about Tobolo and they've studied parts of it, but the forest version spoken by these isolated families hasn't been recorded. The Yaifo live way out in the highlands of Papua New Guinea, in a spot so remote that just getting there is a whole mission on its own. British explorer Benedict Allen was the first outsider to reach them in 1988. He was still a student at the time, and he wrote that they displayed a, quote, terrifying show of strength, and did a dance where they showed off their bows and arrows. But what he saw stuck with him for decades, and in 2017, he tried to go back, alone, and he ended up being missing for weeks. He eventually did make it out, he was fine, but he still didn't get close to the tribe. That's how hard they are to reach. No one's really studied their language, but it's thought to be a dialect of something called Neti, or Neet, which is one of hundreds of languages spoken across Papua New Guinea. Even neighboring tribes barely understand each other, so you can only imagine how far off the grid the Yaifo dialect must be. In the forests of the Gran Chaco, Aoreo have managed to avoid being pulled into the modern world. They move in small family groups, setting up temporary shelters, hunting with traditional tools, and steering clear of the ranchers bulldozing their forest. Most Aoreo today live in settled communities and speak a version of the Aoreo language that linguists have studied a little bit. But the Toto Biego Sode are different. They're a subgroup of the Aoreo, and their version of language hasn't been documented nearly as well. Even other Aoreo say they can barely understand them. Researchers haven't been able to spend time with them without disrupting their lives or putting them at risk. Some people have tried. There are a few aerial photos, footprints, and abandoned camps have been found, but the language itself, no one's ever sat and listened, let alone recorded a conversation. In the rainforest of eastern Ecuador, there are still a few Huaorani clans living completely off the grid. Most Huaorani people have made some contact with the outside world over the years, and their language has been studied a little, but some of these isolated families haven't spoken to outsiders in decades. And even other Huaorani say they can't fully understand what they're saying anymore. Huaorani is already a rare language. It doesn't belong to any known language family. It's what linguists call an isolate, meaning it has no relatives. And that makes any offshoot version of it even more mysterious. These isolated clans broke off in the 60s, and they never came back. And it's not just pronunciation that's changed. When languages evolve in isolation, they can shift in really big ways. Word meanings change, new phrases pop up, old ones disappear. So while technically it might still be Huaorani, what these families are speaking out in the jungle could be totally unrecognizable to anyone else.
Number 4, the electric eel. First of all, never rub an electric eel like they're a genie lamp. You're gonna want 3 more wishes if you do that, my friend. That was the moray eel. That one can bite your fingers off, which is horrible. But you should never touch an eel in the first place because a lot of them are electric. As its name hints towards, these type of eels can mess you up even if you weren't to get the first hit. Specifically, the newly discovered 2.5 meter Electrophorus volti. Yeah, the Electrophorus volti. No, that's not a new hybrid car coming out on the market. This is a dangerous beast. It was appropriately named after Alessandro Volta, aka the guy who invented the battery, and it can release a shock up to 860 volts, more than 7 times the voltage of your average wall plug. It was recently discovered only a year ago that electric eels in Amazon rivers like to travel in packs. They like to travel with their friends, and they all head to the bar together. How fun is that? Packs of electric water snakes. Does it get worse than that? It can't get worse than that, can it? Number 3, black caiman. It can get worse than that. It can get a lot worse than that. If you're not a fan of alligators, you might want to skip to the next one. Black caiman is the largest family member in the Alligator Day crew. These super alligators live in calm, slow moving rivers, places you wouldn't expect, a dinosaur to be and jump out at you, essentially. Just like dangerous river snakes, one I might talk about later, these black caiman will take it slow and just wait for their prey to have a sip of water. And then at that point, the largest predator in the Amazon will grab its lunch and quickly return to the water, just like that. Be very loud and very fast. This thing eats birds, it eats reptiles, mammals even. Yeah. This thing can and will eat everything. Between 2008 and 2013 alone, there were 43 black caiman attacks on people. Yeah, a handful of these attacks were fatal. I'll leave it at that. Number 2, pink dolphins. We'll do a nice one before we do the horrible big bad number 1. Deal? deal. Pink dolphins of the Amazon River. They're the largest of all river dolphins. And adults, more often than not, males end up turning pink as they age. And we have no idea why. Scientists aren't exactly sure why these guys are pink or why the color comes later in life, seeing as, they're born gray. Our leading theory here is that the color is brought on by scar tissue that results from fighting with other dolphins or predators. I'm sure it's not an easy go, swimming through schools of electric eels and all that jazz, so yeah, fair, it could be a pretty rough environment. Some old legends hilariously mention that pink dolphins maybe can turn into a handsome man in the evenings, and then during this time they would hypnotize and seduce young women before turning back into dolphins again near sunrise. Yeah, forget Morbius. I want to see that movie. That's a supervillain origin story I would pay to see. The pink dolphin handsome man. He has one day to find love, and then he turns back into a dolphin. Number 1, green anacondas. Of course, we have to talk about the anaconda, specifically the green anaconda. It's green like the Hulk, because it's always angry and scary and violent. This movie came out 25 years ago. I remember watching Anaconda with my family, and it made me extremely afraid of snakes, actually. This was probably the one that did it. So how accurate was that film? Although the green anaconda is a non-venomous snake, the boa constrictor is still one of the most dangerous ever. It's the most feared, definitely the most feared. Green anacondas live in calm marshes or slow streams, and again, they wait until their large prey gets thirsty, and once they come to the water, the anaconda suffocates and wraps around its lunch. Yeah. Anacondas hunt prey that's larger than us humans, so if they wanted to, they could for sure eat us. There's only no evidence of it happening because humans rarely interact with them in general, so anacondas probably don't know they could eat us. Green anacondas can reach lengths of up to 30 feet, so plenty of space for you and yours. Awesome. You and yours. He ended on a crack, on a voice crack. That's great. That's how scared I am of this anaconda.